again. Demons from Outer Space. It's episode 102. CD. I knew it right off the bat. I didn't need you to tell me. Demons from Outer Space. What? Congratulations?
Congratulations.
What is this, the end of fucking Evangelion?
Yes, actually.
I just wake up in the morning, I'm just surrounded by everybody in the SOS, and they're just telling me, you remembered the episode title. Good for you. The episode number, rather. I haven't come up with the title yet. That's always after the fact.
We've all just recovered from being part of one gigantic sort of psychic soup, I think, is what was going on. And now we're here, and congratulations.
Oh,
so.
well, thank God. Thank God we're on the other side of that. That was a really dark period in our lives where it was kind of confusing and feels like we just ran out of budget. But
Right. Wasn't it weird when all the crayon drawings happened? That was bizarre.
That felt a little lazy to me. But now we've got money again. We've got drugs. We've got pussy. We've got everything we need. We've got the 3 necessary foundations of human survival, and we are ready to do another episode of the Demons from Outer Space. And
funny because we don't have any of those things.
No. Speak for yourself. So, on the last episode of Demons from Outer Space, we announced that we would be doing another Tokusatsu-related episode. But for the life of me, I can't fucking remember what that is. Oh, wait. No, I still don't remember. D, what are we talking about today?
We're gonna talk about our not worst, because that's a strong word, but our least favorite entries in the Godzilla franchise.
Oh, that's right. Because I was gonna ask you, D, you like Godzilla, right?
Yeah, I dabble.
Right, you dabble into Godzilla from time to time. It is a franchise that you certainly have a certain affinity for.
I'm not to brag or anything, but I've been to conventions.
Of course, I actually, believe it or not, I've been to a few conventions myself.
Is that right? Is that right?
That is right. Yes. So here we are, a couple of connoisseurs of Godzilla. And I think it's only fitting that you and I hop on the old podcast recorder, a.k.a. a Malto. We hop on a Malto. Not in a non-sexual way. And we talk about a couple of Godzilla pictures that we don't like. That ain't no good in our eyes. That's the idea tonight, right?
Well, I don't know if I would say ain't no good. I mean, a couple of them might have a few redeeming qualities. And this, again, this isn't a list of what we consider worst Godzilla movies, because I think that's too strong a word. But they're certainly the ones that rank the lowest if I were to make a list and rank them all.
And I actually
which I've done before, but I don't agree with half of that anymore.
Yeah. I actually have a way to keep this sort of, not condensed, but sort of structured. I got three foundations for each movie here. Do you think it's garbage? So is it garbage? That's the first thing. And then 2, what don't you like about it? Specific things that you're like, I don't really like that. What don't you like about it? And then in that, you can also say some redeeming things if you have anything to say, which I agree. I don't think all of these are just completely valueless. There are a couple of these in here that I rather like. And more than that, we've combined our list together because outside of one, they are identical. So
in typical us fashion, we both went off and made separate lists, and then came to the discovery that they were pretty much identical, aside from one from one entry. So we're only going to be talking about 6 movies in total, because we each have a list of 5, and both lists are identical, save for one slot.
Mm-hmm. That slot has a particular name. We'll get there. It'll make sense when we get there. The third criteria for describing the films that we don't really like, though, is would you recommend that somebody watching the Godzilla series in full for the first time skip these entries?
Assuming that they're not a completionist, I imagine.
Yeah, that is the idea. They're not psychopaths like you and I. They're one of them normies that I hear so much about. So that is the idea. That is the basis. Dylan, are you ready to get started?
Fucking yeah, let's do it.
All right, so we're going to start off, actually, with what I consider to be the first bad Godzilla movie. The original crap Godzilla movie, I think, is the best way to describe it. Godzilla Raids Again from 1955. Dylan, that is the first entry on your list as well, obviously. So,
yes.
Why is this Is it garbage?
Ultimately, as far as I'm concerned, yeah, kind of, because it's really hard to watch. It's a hard movie to sit through.
I think it's classy garbage though.
Yeah,
It's
I
got
get.
some really well made, like, I can see what they think they're doing. Like, it kind of works in theory. But yeah, it's not a fun sit. It's a real chore to sit through. And I think the thing that really kills it, what don't work about it, as I wrote here, is that it's a shit remake of 54 with a super prototypey, if not entirely valueless monster fight. And that I don't think it's entirely valueless, I mean. Which then disappears halfway through the movie, and then it turns back into a crap remake of 54. Although the ending is a little different, I guess. Would you agree?
Well,
Is that your consensus as well?
pretty much the key word I think you just said is prototypey. That's the major problem for me. This is it's a movie that, interestingly enough, it's very important to the series, despite its in my opinion low quality, because it's the first Godzilla sequel. It's really the first kaiju sequel, if you think about it, if you're not counting like the American King Kong movies as kaiju movies, which that gets into whether you use Japanese definition of the word or the American sort of way we use the word. But that's getting into some hairy territory. Point is, it's like the first like Godzilla sequel. It's the first to do this idea of like, we're going to put two kaiju in the movie and they're going to fight each other. And they don't know how to do it yet. And you see that a little bit even in the next movie, KKVG, which is one of your favorites. They get a lot better at it, but even in that movie, they still don't quite know what they're doing all the way. They don't really nail it until 64 with Mothra versus Godzilla, and this is just the first attempt at it, and I don't think it works. First of all, it occupies so little of the movie. Anguirus is finished halfway through the movie, and then the rest of the movie is just like, now we got to deal with this Godzilla. Effects-wise, the movie takes a step down.
That's the dialogue from the film, by the way. It's a soundbite that we actually took.
Effects-wise, the movie takes a step down in quality. The Godzilla suit doesn't look as good. There are a couple
moments. It's not completely valueless. I agree with you. The monster fight is prototypey as hell, but they do some tricks that they don't do later. I kind of like the sped up nature of it. Obviously, it doesn't work consistently because you can just it's a really cheap, obvious effect. But in certain shots and certain sequences, it kind of works. Like when they start ramming into each other, I think that works, especially when they're on the island towards the beginning. Would you say that their little...
This movie also gave us that famous image that's worked its way around the internet as memes, where it looks like Godzilla's fucking Anguirus up the ass. You know the one I'm talking about?
Yeah.
They're up against the castle. Like,
it's interesting you bring up KKVG.
So it has that going for it, but
it's interesting you bring up KKVG because that has a lot of those screenshots as well that get used for those memes. So I guess that's a part of the prototypiness, is that they couldn't quite distinguish the monsters having sex with them fighting yet. And that's really the goal. And I guess Mothra vs. Godzilla is the first movie, the first kaiju film, to really be able to distinguish between the monsters having sex and between them fighting.
Exactly. Yeah. Nobody ever watched Mothra versus Godzilla and thought to themselves, "What is this, King Dong?" Like, you know what you're watching.
Well, if that's the mark, then I guess Godzilla Raids Again fails on every level, because I thought this was porn when we were watching it. And it was weird. And it was weird porn because I kind of thought that the acting scenes, like the story bits, were sort of better than the sex. I actually think the human stuff is kind of better than the monster stuff in this movie, because it's not great, but it's okay. It's fine. It works. It's just not anything to write home about, and it doesn't really connect back to the monster stuff in any way that's really all that exciting. Kobayashi's death, that's okay.
But the problem is the human stuff at a certain point in the movie just sort of stops. They change locations for no reason whatsoever.
That's right.
It's like overly complicated at points. They like do things, and you're watching the movie, and you're like, "Why? What are we doing? What's all this now? What's going on?"
It's nice that they pick a really specific viewpoint to center the film around, though. Like I don't know if you mentioned this when you were talking about it. I think you may have. It's kind of more of an American kaiju film than it is a Japanese one. It strikes me as more of a Beast from 20,000 Fathoms or Them. In that it's not even a them. Them is almost more Godzilla in its approach. In that it picks a specific point of view and it sticks with it the entire film. We follow a couple of characters and they are our protagonists the entire time. Gojira bounces around. We're getting a really kind of overview of Japan in that film, very intentionally. Not really the case here. So I think the change in location is a contrivance to keep us with the action. It's almost Godzilla 2014 in a way, where it has to constantly contrive reasons for the main characters to be where the monsters are. And it gets kind of hilarious towards the end when they have to, like, have an entire, like, party scene to establish that, I can't remember the main guy's name, him, and Kobayashi. I actually remember his friend's name more so. That they were in the military at some point, and they're like friends with all these military pilots. So that way, when they get the call that Godzilla is still alive and that they have to go fight him, they can be in on it, you know? So
right.
it's stuff like that don't work.
All set up that could have been worked into the first half of the movie instead of coming at like this weird point in the middle. It feels like two smaller movies glued together at a certain point, because in the middle there's like a very definite cut. Isn't there kind of like a time skip, and all of a sudden they're like in a different part of Japan, and like there's like all these different things going on, and that's the moment that really you start scratching your head. That's the point when it stops like progressing as a typical sort of movie of this nature, and you just start to go like, what are they doing? Like, why is all of this happening?
And I just don't think it offers very much, if anything, in the way of fresh, exciting cinema. That's just all. That's all I can kind of come down on. The score's okay. There's a couple of moments where Masaru Sato, who obviously has a lot of really great Godzilla scores later in his career, including Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, which was one of my personal favorites, and Son of Godzilla is also great. This one has a couple of moments. The main title is fine. I like that one, actually. But then there's one when Godzilla and Anguirus first show up on, it's Osaka, I think, in this movie, right?
Yeah, well, that's where they have their fight, yeah.
Yeah, that's where they distinguish this from 54. Obviously, they have to change the city.
And then the later part of the film, I think, is in Hokkaido?
Yeah, that's Hokkaido, but Godzilla doesn't show up in Hokkaido, I don't think. He's just out to sea. He just pops up on that island or whatever. But what I was going to say was...
like near Hokkaido or something.
Yeah. What I was going to say was... you have Masaru Sato trying to recreate Akira Ifukube's lower sort of bass music from 54 when Godzilla's first coming into Tokyo, that like bum, 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 like that really low dramatic stuff. He tries to do that in this. And it's very clearly like that, a very kind of hollow attempt to do that. And it sounds very like B American movie score as opposed to the Japanese kaiju movies, which always have a much more like, well, when Ifukube is involved at the very least, a much more lively score. So that's disappointing that it comes off more that way. But I mean, did we talk about how crap the Godzilla suit looks? I mean,
yeah, we mentioned that it's kind of similar to the previous suit, but it's way too scrawny and like the teeth are fucked up. I don't know how to describe it. It just doesn't look good to me.
Does it have any good moments? The suit.
Yeah, I can remember a few times when we were watching it, and now, which by the way, in preparation for this video, we did rewatch all the movies on this list. There were a few moments where I was watching it and I remember thinking, oh, it doesn't look so bad in this shot, but I couldn't like tell you what they were like after the fact. It's not a very memorable movie, I find. Whenever I try to think of this, whenever I try to remember the specifics, I have to really strain. Also, there's a thing where, and remind me, is this just part of the American thing, or did they fuck this up in Japan too? There's like weird moments where they like mix up the roars.
It happens less so in the Japanese version, but I think it still happens a couple of times. I could be wrong. Remember, we watched all these together the last time we watched them, so we had the audio real low. We're reading the subtitles and shit. So I can't exactly remember if it happened, but I remember the roars I did hear I remember mostly being Godzilla's, but it's not the 54 roar. It's a weird version of it that I don't like, but it's still a version of that. And then you hear something more akin to the traditional Showa Godzilla roar towards the end, although you get a bit of that in 54 as well, which is the one they stick with mostly for the next movie. So, anyway, one last thing. Well, two last things, actually. One, is there anything of value in this that you also wanted to mention that we didn't already cover? What do you think of Dr. Yamane's reappearance? Do you like that, or is that just sort of another, oh yeah, okay, fine?
It's fine, but it's too brief for me to give the movie an endorsement based off of that. I guess if you're just like a huge fan of Takashi Shimura and you want to see every movie he's in, then I guess you ain't really got much of a choice. But,
Stockholm Syndrome,
yeah, I mean,
will make you love Raids again.
Not really a long enough cameo to even like add to the quality of the movie, in my opinion. It's just sort of he's in there and he delivers a little exposition and then he rides back off.
What exposition does he even deliver? Like, oh, we can't kill Godzilla. We knew that already.
Isn't he also the one that talks about how, or is this again the American version creeping into my memory? Isn't he also the one who talks about like Anguirus and how they're like from the same period or something?
No, that's the other dude in the Japanese version.
Oh, okay.
Although Yamane could still provide that exposition very sensible. Like, he's also a paleontologist. He's just...
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't just have him deliver it. That's odd.
Yeah, I don't know why they have the two of them, but there is another guy in the Japanese version who delivers the majority of the exposition about Anguirus. And then Yamane doesn't even deliver much about Godzilla. He, in fact, mostly just serves the role of connecting the two films continuity-wise, because he mentions Serizawa and the Oxygen Destroyer, so obviously he connects the bridge there. But after that, we're just treated to like 2 solid minutes of stock footage from 54 with no audio as they watch it on a projector in the film. And it's 2 minutes of absolute boring cinema, and I don't know what the fuck they were thinking. I mean, this was only a year later. I don't know why they thought that people wouldn't remember. And it's on a box, and if you're watching it later, it's on a box set with the other movies. So I don't know what the fuck they were thinking.
Well, yeah, this is the difference. 54, it's kind of slowly paced, but it's never boring. It always holds your attention. This movie, equally slowly paced, but incredibly boring. Does not hold your attention. Low energy, like it just fucking. It just doesn't thrill the viewer. I don't find.
It's just a run-of-the-mill monster movie, and if there's anything that can put you and me to sleep, it's a run-of-the-mill monster movie, because we know them like the back of our dicks. And this is a movie that we will never be able to remember specifics from, because in the broad strokes, we know it like the back of our dicks.
I guess if there's any endorsement I can give, it's watch the American version if you want to hear a man say banana oil.
So, let me ask you this then, to wrap up on Godzilla Raids again.
And try to piece together for yourself what the fuck that means.
Would you recommend somebody who is watching these movies for the first time to skip it?
Well, if you're not a completionist like me, who felt the need to see every Godzilla movie, or if you're not somebody who's particularly interested in watching it for its sort of historical importance, because you can't really take that away from it,
that's true. It is the first giant monster fight movie.
But if you're not really somebody who cares about either of those things, and you're just like a casual person who likes to watch Godzilla movies, yeah, this one's not very entertaining. And I mean, obviously, you're free to watch it for yourself and garner your own opinion. But as far as I'm concerned, you could probably skip it and be just as happy.
Yeah, I think if you're just somebody who's casually going to go through the Godzilla franchise, unless you, again, historical importance aside, there's nothing in this one. You could jump right to King Kong versus Godzilla, and his reappearance will make about as much sense. So, there's really no reason to watch this outside of just the historical perspective, and if you're a completionist, I think. So, yeah, I think you could totally skip it.
Or you could watch Mothra versus Godzilla and think to yourself, wow, suddenly these feel like Godzilla movies. Because that's it, right? That's when they hit the formula. That's when they that's bang. This is it.
That's very true. Well, because after that, at a certain point, he stops erupting from things, and he just starts showing up like it's a regular thing. So yeah, you have to get to that point, and then that's when it sort of it hits that formula. So next up, we're actually jumping forward a considerable amount of time. from the first bad Godzilla movie to the first bad Millennium Godzilla movie, Godzilla vs. Megaguirus from the year 2000. Came out in 2001 in America, 2000 in Japan. It's confusing because Godzilla 2000 came out in 2000 in America, but in 1999 in Japan. Bah! It's confusing. So Godzilla vs. Megaguirus, Dylan McCandless, aka Super DM64. Is it garbage?
Yes and no.
I think it's garbage.
The frustrating thing about Mechaguirus is that you have a case here of some really cool ideas with just terribly lackluster execution. The version of the universe that they set up is very interesting. The idea of Dimension Tide is interesting.
However,
Megaguirus itself is an interesting idea for an opponent, but the movie just doesn't make you care about any of it.
If I might say, they just can't get a grasp on it.
A G grasp.
A G grasp. So, in this film, there is a version of what I guess is supposed to be this version of G-Force, where, they sort of monitor Godzilla's activity. This version of Godzilla is kind of different. He only pops up every now and then whenever he's attracted to nuclear energy, I guess. This is a different version of the timeline, as I think you mentioned, which is one of the cooler ideas in this, where Godzilla was not killed in 1954 and instead only popped up once every decade or so to feed on nuclear energy. And it's been a while.
Is this the one that is in canon with all the non-Godzilla Toho films, or was that the Mechagodzilla?
No, that's the Mechagodzilla movies. In this version, it seems like he's the only giant monster until Megaguirus shows up. That's at least the way it feels to me. That could be wrong, but they don't mention any other monster, and it's called G-Grasper, so, it seems like he's the only threat. Like in Heisei, even then, he's kind of the only threat, and he's, producing all the other threats. So, it makes sense. It makes sense that they call it G-Force. So, that's the idea there.
In Heisei continuity, none of the other monsters ever stick around. It's like they show up and then they wind up dying. And Godzilla's the only one who's a consistent threat.
Yeah. Well, you got Mothra, obviously. And you got Rodan. Oh, no, Rodan dies, too.
Right, and they didn't know about Rodan until they went to the island and found him. So
he even fits into that. It's crazy, man. Godzilla's a fucking lunatic. So, this movie is unlike Raids Again. It's not completely wasted in terms of, there's some original ideas in there, as you mentioned. So I think there's almost more of a reason to watch this one, because there's some more original ideas in it. But the thing is, it's not even that it's boring. It's that it just, it doesn't make you care. I don't know how to word it. The film never really settles into a story that is able to bring you along with characters or with a narrative that they're going through. There's nothing to it. Godzilla gets all this backstory towards the beginning. They try this bizarre weapon to kill him. This bug comes through a portal. It's very convoluted. It's sort of a bizarre mix of a Showa Godzilla movie and a Heisei one, because Godzilla has so little to do with anything. In terms of his screen time, he's barely in it. And then in terms of the story, he's got more of a Heisei role where he's constantly mentioned. So you'd think that would make it better, but the monster story and the human story never really come together in any interesting way, even though they totally could. It's weird. You know what else I think hurts it? It's a really shitty looking movie.
Yeah, from a technical standpoint, of all the Millennium movies, and they all have this to varying degrees, but of all the Millennium movies, this is the one that suffers the most, I think, from bad early 2000s CGI.
Not even just the CGI. Just everything looks really cheap, and it almost looks like a fucking Power Rangers movie.
So much bad fucking shit. All the fucking bugs flying around, they all look terrible.
Yeah, I feel like I was watching the finale to Power Rangers fucking SPD.
Isn't this the one where we get the Or am I thinking, or is this 2000 now? Is this the one where we get the really bad shot of him swimming underwater? One
No,
of the
that
really,
is this one because he gets hit by the missiles and he's swimming underwater. Yeah, that is this one.
that's right, yeah.
Well,
Yeah. Like
the
all of
one in
that.
2000 ain't great either, huh? But this one's worse.
Right. Well, 2000 had that terrible shot of him. Or was that this movie? Of him walking on the beach, that really bad composite.
That's
You know the one I'm talking about?
2000. That's
Okay,
2000.
that's 2000.
Yeah, this one doesn't have a shot like that, I don't think. I mean, he walks onto an island at one point, but that all looks fine, I'm pretty sure. The bugs all flying around don't look great, like you said, but whatever. It's fine, I guess.
The fight at the end I don't find engaging.
Oh, no. No, 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 no. No.
It's
Uh,
impossible for me. And I get it. This movie has its fans, whatever. They obviously see something in it that I don't. But it's impossible for me watching this movie to feel anything aside from apathy. Uh,
yeah, I don't know what it is. It doesn't capture my imagination or my interest in any way whatsoever. And it should. There's some good ideas in it. I like the dickhead human villain who creates the new form of energy that Godzilla and Megaguirus are attracted to. That's interesting. They don't do anything with it. I like the idea of Dimension Time. I mean, obviously we've used that to our own end in recent years. So we obviously like that idea, but none of it comes together in any interesting or compelling way. Simply.
you think maybe one problem is that the plot might be too complicated? Like maybe there's just too many threads going on at once. Because you've got the new Godzilla history, you've got the Dimension Tide thing going on.
Yeah, but
On
I
top
don't
of
think
that,
it couldn't have worked though. Like it's not like this movie had that as a problem from the onset. I just
you
don't
got the
think that they.
bugs, you got
I just don't think they made any effort to make it work.
you got the fucking flood, which I guess is connected to the bugs. I don't know. You got fucking and then
Oh, that's right. Yes, yes, it is because remember the kid dumps the egg down the. It's all the kid's fault. He dumps the egg down the storm drain, and then all the water rises up.
yeah, that's another reason to dislike this movie. It's about a kid.
Well, only like it's weird. It's such a weird movie. There's like it's another Godzilla movie where you kind of get lost in it and not in a good way because there's a cast of thousands, you know? It's like we're constantly bouncing around from person to person. There's the
You never
there's the
focus on one
robotics
character.
dude, there's the soldier chick with the tragic backstory, there's the kid with the tragic backstory, there's the fucking scientist lady. The lady.
What is it with the Millennium series and like military chicks with tragic backstories?
Yeah, this is a very prototypey sort of version of Against Mechagodzilla and Tokyo SOS. Except it's no good.
Yeah, it just I think pacing is also an issue. I think this movie drags on and feels way longer than it actually is.
Yeah, for sure.
Which how long is it, by the way?
Too long.
It has like one amusing moment where Godzilla does a body slam, and you don't have to watch the whole movie for that. There's clips all over YouTube. Fucking.
What else? Godzilla's a total non-entity in this movie. He doesn't do anything.
I don't think he looks. I don't think he looks great. You know, it's the 2000 suit. The 2000 suit looks great in Godzilla 2000.
Oh god,
Part of
that movie is a visual tour de force.
Part of the reason being, I think this suit looks a lot better in that movie because they shot it a lot of times at night, and I guess that suit just looks better at night to me. I don't know, because when I watch it in this movie, somehow it just doesn't look as good. And I don't know if it's the light or just.
It looks beat up. It looks like maybe it's because they're recycling it and they were just too lazy to make a new suit. The green is a lot clearer in this movie, and I think that that's a testament to how cheap and rushed the lighting is.
Yeah, again, is that just because they weren't shooting most of it at nighttime, or did they like repaint it for this movie? Do you know? Or
I have no idea. I think it's just because of the way they lit it. That's the way it looks to me.
It's far more green and purple than it even was in 2000.
Because I'm thinking of like the one time we see him during the day in 2000, and he looks a lot more green in those parts than he does the rest of the movie, but not nearly as green as he does in this. So I think it's all lighting.
I imagine
because 2000 looks like a movie. This looks like an episode of Power Rangers, as I keep saying.
Yeah. I imagine camera placement probably has something to do with it too. Like the 2000 knows how to film a monster. Like that fucking the first shot in that movie where you're first introduced to Godzilla was the fucking
so good.
the car, the pan up. That's great.
the bit with the car is also great. I mean, yeah. So 2000 is a good movie. Megaguirus is not. Would you tell somebody to skip it?
Probably, yeah.
All right.
Again, there are some interesting ideas in it, though. So if they find any of those ideas interesting, maybe they might want to check it out for that reason. But and again, this movie does have its fans. So obviously there are people out there who see something in it that you and I do not. But as far as I'm concerned, yeah, I mean, I very rarely watch it.
I actually say don't skip it because I think it's so weird and bizarre that you if you're interested in Godzilla, well, I guess that would go back to completionism. So I guess I don't know. This movie is just it's a very different Godzilla movie. So I say give it a shot, but you probably won't like it because it just never comes together into anything. I also don't like the scene with the human characters with the bazookas on the ground fighting Godzilla. That should be a really cool scene because we don't get much like that. But it looks like shit. And that's really the thing that kills it.
They did it better in Final Wars when the mutants were fighting Ebra.
Yeah, that is kind of a similar bit to that, I guess. Well, all right. So, D.
By the way, a lot of you are going to hate us because Final Wars is not on this list, but we both enjoy the hell out of it. So,
yeah, I like a lot of Final Wars. Final Wars is not far from a perfect movie, but it's got some good shit in it. I like most of the things that I see on screen in that. The next two films, not so much, because we're about to talk about two back to back in what I like to call the Heisei double penetration. So, Dylan and I have a bit of a disagreement when it comes to our Heisei selections for the 5 Godzilla movies that we don't really like. So, Dylan, why don't we talk about yours first? Because I don't like yours either. And you have differing opinions with me on mine. So, we'll talk about that one next. So, why don't you start with the one that you don't like? Because I didn't put it on my list. Partially because it's on yours, so I figured, I can just cover it there. But also, I actually found but I rewatched it with you, obviously, because it's on your list. I found a lot of things that I liked about that movie that I didn't like when I was a kid, and I think that it's one that it doesn't overcome the fact that it is bad, but it's got a lot more good ideas in it than I think it does like really shit execution. I don't know. We'll talk about it. So. You get into it.
Well, my least favorite film from the Heisei era, and again, this is one that is kind of polarizing. A lot of people don't like it, but then there are some that do like it. They've even made videos defending it. But we're going to be talking about Godzilla versus Space Godzilla, and for me, it's pretty much the same problem that I have with Megaguirus. Honestly, I kind of consider them like in the same vein. It's almost like Space Godzilla is the Megaguirus of its day. I feel like there are a ton of like really interesting ideas in there, but just they're executed poorly, and the effects are kind of lackluster compared to some of the other stuff that was happening in Heisei around this. I mean, the space scene alone is fucking awful.
Yeah, that is a really good point. Technically, this is very similar to Megaguirus in that it's kind of a lackluster B production. And part of the issue, though, with this one as opposed to Megaguirus is that this is Toho trying to do high-end Hollywood blockbusters in Japan, because this was at a time when they were trying to make a Godzilla movie in America. So they're trying to go, well, we're a fucking high-class, big-budget franchise, even in our native country. So that's what this is trying to be, and it's very ambitious for that, like the space shit. There's some like James Bond international terrorist stuff going on, but not only does it all come off as like super cheesy, but it doesn't come together into anything. This movie is a total just messy tapestry.
Also, other similar issues to Megaguirus. We didn't really bring this up with regards to Megaguirus, but I do feel the same way. I don't really like the score in this one.
It's kind of cheap sounding, ain't it? It kind of sounds like somebody doing it on a synthesizer or like a keyboard, like a 90s keyboard.
Mm-hmm. Also very similar to Megaguirus. I feel like it drags. I don't feel like it's very well paced. And ultimately, something that it shares with both Megaguirus and Raids Again. And really most of what's on this list. Ultimately, I think this is the ultimate sin for a Godzilla movie, and anything that's on my list will probably have this to some degree. It just bores me. It bores the snot out of me. I don't enjoy watching it. I can't force myself to sit through it. I mean, I did recently for this video, so you're all welcome. But
And I got
yeah.
to experience it firsthand. It was delightful. He was such a joy. Do you think it's garbage though, D?
I don't like it. Fucking the kid from Shrek Forever. I don't like it.
I don't think it's garbage. I don't I don't like it, but I'm okay with it existing. By and large, there are some bizarre things that bother me. Like, I don't understand why Godzilla Jr. has to
start reviewing movies as that kid from that Shrek movie. Everything's going to be on a scale of I don't like it to I love you, Daddy.
That's perfect. There you go. That's your thing now. You've adopted it. Great. But what I was saying was, I don't really remember what I was saying, but I'll just continue on about Space Godzilla. I remember. I don't understand why Baby Godzilla has to get kidnapped. It serves no fucking purpose in the story whatsoever.
It's literally the plot of the first episode of Dragon Ball Z. Fucking Godzilla finds out he has a relative from space. He kidnaps his son. Then he has to team up with an enemy to get his son back.
Yeah, even though there is no rivalry between Moguera and Godzilla because they haven't fought yet.
No, but the idea is that obviously G-Force ain't just G-Force didn't design Moguera to fucking shake Godzilla's hand.
No, surely, but wouldn't it have? I think the initial idea was to do a refurbished Mechagodzilla, right?
I guess that's another thing that never makes sense to me. Moguera is such a step down from Mechagodzilla.
It is sort of like Mechagodzilla if you stripped all the fucking majesty and coolness off of it, ain't it?
Like, I've always felt that way. The first time I was introduced to Moguera, and Space Godzilla for that matter, was playing Save the Earth on the PS2. I had never seen the movie before. I had never seen the Mysterians. I had never seen either of those things, so I wasn't familiar with Moguera. And he always struck me as like the prototype that you would build before you like got your shit.
He always struck you as somebody who would go bowling.
He always struck me as the prototype before you get your shit together and actually make Mechagodzilla. You know.
I always liked the level in Save the Earth, though, where you were Moguera flying through space and you were fighting Space Godzilla. I always thought that was fucking dope.
Yeah, that's a lot better than in the movie.
Yeah, I was literally about to say it's 10 times better than the sequence in the movie and looks 10 times better.
Actually, you know what? You want to raise this movie one peg on the do the roar scale? Fucking take the movie and just edit out the actual scene of them in space and just cut in gameplay footage of
the director.
It'll be 10 times more interesting.
The director of this movie here is that, and he's just like, "Get me, Toho, I want to do a fan edit." I wonder if that accent is racist. Definitely, but that's okay.
Definitely racist.
Cool. I mean, as long as we're all open about it, I think it's fine. All right, I'm gonna do some defending of this movie, D. Well, you did some of it. Space Godzilla was a cool idea in theory.
He is. I fucking love the monster himself. I mean, again, my first exposure to Space Godzilla was playing Save the Earth, and he's a fucking beast in that game. I could whoop anybody's ass as Space Godzilla. And I remember when I found out
he was always so easy to win as because you just had to create the crystals and you could siphon energy off them.
Especially if you're in the boxing ring, because you can spawn the crystals outside of the boxing ring, and then they can't break them. It's the best shit. Him and Jet Jaguar just break that game. Anyway, but that was the first time I ever discovered Space Godzilla as a character, and I was like, oh, there's this thing called Space Godzilla, like that. I never knew that existed. That's so cool. And then when I finally got around to seeing the movie, I was just so fucking disappointed. I had built it up in my mind as like this cool thing, and then and it was from the High Sea era, so how could it be bad, right? And then I watched it, and to put it bluntly, I don't like it.
The first time I saw it, I was in about I don't know, 4th or 5th grade. I was a little older. It was one of the ones I saw later. I don't have a lot of nostalgia for this movie, I will say. I didn't hate it when I first watched it when I was a kid, though. But I did definitely think, oh, this is a cheesy balls version of Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2. And that was kind of my opinion of it. But what I liked about it initially, and what I still like about it, I like a lot of the human characters. They get annoying as the movie goes on, but early on, I like them. I like that G-Force sends its top agents to islands where Godzilla is on cruise ships. That's cool. I mean, that's funny. Like, I can't believe that they fucking think that, like, so Godzilla's on this island, right? And we need to send out a couple of our dudes to scope out the scene. Let's get, like, fucking Disney Cruise Lines to take them there. You know? I love that. But I really like Yuki. And one thing you know about me is that whenever Gondo is involved in a Godzilla movie, I'm in. And how involved is Gondo in this here Godzilla movie?
I mean, hardly. His sister's in the movie.
And he is also the motivation for Yuki being like, I'm gonna shoot Godzilla with a fucking blood bullet. Oh, you don't like the blood bullet, D? You don't like the blood bullet, right?
I don't think it makes sense. It feels like most of the first bit of this movie is like just dicking around on this island, killing time until Space Godzilla shows up to.
You say killing time? That's my favorite part of the movie because that's the only time that I like any of the ideas that are being discussed.
I don't know. It's fucking. It's so dull. It's just all so dull to me. I can't. I don't like it.
I enjoy parts of it. I like when they're digging holes.
Also, we'll watch Holes.
I was about to say that. No, but I like this better than Holes. They should have brought the Mogira to Holes.
Oh no, you're crazy. Those fucking lizards in holes. Remember that shit?
I do.
Shit was dope.
I didn't. I never really liked Holes. I'll be honest.
I haven't seen Holes since the early to mid 2000s. I'm willing to bet it probably doesn't hold up, but I have fond memory.
I remember Shia LaBeouf almost fucking Sigourney Weaver in that movie. That happened, right?
No.
No?
I don't think so.
All right, never mind.
I remember the moment where like Sigourney Weaver didn't she like murder somebody by like scratching them because she had like nail polish?
Yeah. Well, that was a thing. Yeah, she would like scratch people with her nails or whatever. Yeah.
Like rattlesnake venom, and I was like, oh, she's like a fucking supervillain. This is crazy. Bitch from Alien, killing people. All right.
Who thunk?
But,
all right. Would you skip Godzilla versus Space Godzilla? Would you recommend somebody skip it?
See, this is an odd one just because it's part of the Heisei continuity. So it's one of those where it's like, do you need to watch it just because it's in the context of Heisei and you need to see what's going on in the Heisei continuity? So
because it's a running canon, yeah.
Right. However, I will say this is probably the most self-contained out of all the Heisei movies.
It feels like a Showa movie set in the Heisei canon. It, however, is not self-contained in terms of like entry point because there's a lot of continuity at the start.
Right. Well, you can't watch it if you haven't seen. Well, I mean, I guess you could, but I mean, it's connected to fucking Biollante and Save the Earth, and they can't really seem to make up their fucking mind.
Battle for Earth.
They can't seem to make up their fucking mind how the fucking Godzilla cells got up into space one minute. It's like, it was Biollante. No, it was fucking Mothra. Like, that's another thing about the movie. Like, they can't get their exposition straight.
Also, why was Mothra in this movie?
Who the fuck knows? I think the idea was that the twin fairies, who of course are off in space after the events of Battle for Earth, they communicate telepathically with Mickey to warn her that Space Godzilla is coming, is I think the idea.
So Mothra's hitting this meteorite, right? And she happens to fly past Space Godzilla as he's hurtling towards Earth, and is like, oh shit, I better give somebody a heads up that that's a thing. And she decides that Mickey should be that person.
Well, I guess Mickey is the one that they were able to reach because of her psychic ability. They might not have been able to contact just anyone.
She was the only one they could call and wouldn't, like, die at the sheer thought of two tiny people flying in via a magical fairy moth to alert them that the Earth was doomed.
Also, speaking of Mickey, so all of a sudden in the middle of this movie, she becomes Jean Grey. She can like lift shit with her mind.
So her
And
powers definitely take a rise in this.
and her excuse for why she's never displayed that power before, oh, I never tried it before. Oh, like, bitch, you never tried it before? Like, that's the worst excuse I've ever heard.
So Mickey
In my life.
Sagusa is a character.
First of all, that's the new fucking Jet Jaguar. Oh, he programmed himself to grow. Like that's the new version of that. That's the high say version of that. Oh, I never knew I could lift things with my mind because I never tried to before. Like, fuck off. If I had fucking psychic powers, that'd be the first shit I'd be trying. You know what I'm saying? I'd be fucking like out in the parking lots trying to lift cars and shit.
Oh, you start with cars. Like, oh, you don't start with like fucking leaves or whatever. Cars, like.
Who wants to lift a fucking leaf? You're gonna start with fucking shit you want to throw around.
I can't say I disagree because Mickey Sagusa is a character who has like tried to take Godzilla on in the past. Like in Biollante, she stares him down to try and get him to stop advancing on a city, and fails. So you think she would have at one point gone, I wonder if I can move shit with my mind.
Presumably, she's had these powers all her life, right? So you're telling me that not once when she was a kid, it never occurred to her, this bitch who lives in a fucking universe where like fucking comic books and shit are a thing, it never occurs to her to be like, hey, I wonder if I can lift shit with my mind. For crying out loud, when I was a kid, it's a damn good thing I didn't actually have Dragon Ball Z powers, because God knows I tried to Kamehameha everything in sight. You know what I'm saying? Like
that would have been an awkward way to discover it if you were a fan of it, and then suddenly you were just able to do it.
You'd be like, oh, damn, well, I wish I'd gotten the death beam. It's a little more accurate, but all right.
Yeah. God knows what explanation you could come up with for that. But all right, so D, I want to move on to my side of the Heisei double penetration. So I will agree with you. That's Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, not a good movie. Kind of crap. But I like some things about it, so I decided to axe it off my list in favor of a Heisei movie that I don't like at all very much, and one that you are pretty fond of, and one that most of the world seems pretty fond of. I seem to be in the minority on this one.
I've seen plenty of people who don't like it and plenty of people who do like it. From what I've seen, it seems to be pretty equally split.
So it's sort of a polarizing one, being Godzilla vs. Mothra from 1992, or better known as Godzilla and Mothra, The Battle for Earth. Godzilla and Mothra, The Battle for Earth is the last Godzilla movie that I saw new. I've talked about this before. I didn't even know it was a thing until I got the DVD of Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, which was a double feature with Battle for Earth. And I was like, holy shit, I have this now. Amazing. Well, I guess I had seen that there was a 90s version of the Mothra movie, and I had seen Space Godzilla, so I always just assumed that there was a movie I didn't see. So I guess I always knew it was a thing, but just to see it in my hands, like, it became... Oh, shit, somebody texted me. It became, it became a thing. Sorry, somebody sent me a stupid thing. It became a thing, obviously... later.
Which, what a great way to discover that a Godzilla movie exists. That reminds me of the old days before I had internet. I would go to like a fucking flea market or some shit and see like a Godzilla cassette and be like, that's a movie that exists?
Yeah, it was fun that my last movie I got to have that experience with. However, I wish I would have liked it more. So why don't I like it? Do I think it's garbage? No, it's not garbage. It's fucking painfully boring, though, and I hate sitting through it, because it's a really, like, lazy, uninspired remake of Mothra, with some elements of Mothra vs. Godzilla thrown in, with a cool idea for a Mothra villain thrown in, not even really a villain, more of just a cool idea for a Mothra character with Batra, and then Godzilla's thrown into two scenes. And that's the movie. And then around it, you have a human cast that I really don't like. There's some moments where the story is kind of okay, but I don't really like the cast. The dub is, ugh. And I'm, that's to be expected. But all in all, I just don't find the story to be much of anything. It's sort of like this glossy, like sanitized '90s bullshit to me. I don't know. Just in terms of like everything looks just like super glossy and just sanitized, and this movie has zero edge to me, even though it should. Like there are scenes where it feels like it's trying to have an edge, but it just doesn't. It's a non-start to me. Effects wise, it's pretty solid actually. That element I certainly can't really knock too much, but it looks just super like clean and not cheap, but just sort of sterile to me, and it doesn't have any personality. And I think that there are a few moments where the effects aren't necessarily amazing, but I almost think it's more in terms of what they're used for. Like, I just don't think they get the chance to be that impressive outside of the scene where Godzilla comes out of the volcano, which is obviously fucking dope. And the stuff at the bottom of the ocean is cool. Like, we've never seen that. Like, that's cool. But when Mothra and Godzilla are fighting in the water, like, that don't look great to me. And then the last fight, I think, is really boring. Like, they just... It's Mothra and Batra flying around Godzilla with lightning flying around. And that's all I saw. And because Godzilla has no place in the story outside of that, it doesn't feel satisfying to me as a final fight. As a Godzilla movie, it's one that I just don't really know how to feel about, and the feelings that I'm able to muster up about it are mostly, wow, this is a not great remake of Mothra. I know it's got its fans. Dylan, I know you are one of them, so I'm going to let you defend it for a minute while I go plug my laptop in before it dies and we lose this recording. But I don't like it, even though I don't think it's garbage, so tell me why I'm wrong.
Yeah, Battle for Earth is a hard one for me to defend because while I do feel it's a good movie, I also have to recognize that I'm not exactly objective. This quite the opposite from Bill. This is one of the earliest Godzilla movies that I have memories of. It was the only Heisei movie that we had a VHS copy of, and therefore growing up, and therefore the only Heisei movie that I had seen at that point. It's the movie really as a child that made me fall in love with Godzilla music, like fucking because the score is fantastic, and it's obviously, you know,
yes, it is pretty good. I will confess.
It's Ifukube at some of his finest, especially I fucking love the Batra theme, fucking amazing.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of, definitely.
Batra is such a fucking great. Like he's just so he embodies the spirit of the 90s to me, because essentially what they did is they took Mothra and then they made it extreme, like he's just fucking metal. Like, just look at him. God, it's kind of a precursor to the Rebirth of Mothra trilogy in a way. It almost feels like a proof of concept. Like, they made this movie, I was like, oh, that was successful. People like Mothra. Let's make a trilogy.
Do you think the first Rebirth of Mothra movie is better than this?
Oh, I'm not sure.
I would say they're probably on par with each other.
I think the third one probably is.
I would have to agree.
The third one is a visual, smorgasbord.
Except for the dinosaurs.
Although it doesn't have the benefit of Ifukube.
No, and it doesn't have the benefit of good-looking dinosaurs either. But it is a cool-looking movie. I love Cretaceous Mothra. That's badass.
Yeah.
That was always cool. I just Battle for Earth. It doesn't click with me. I don't like the fucking Indiana Jones ripoff stuff towards the beginning. It looks fine. Like, it's shot really well, but it just doesn't make any sense to me. Not that it doesn't make any sense. It just I don't know why I'm watching this. This movie just does not come up with a reason for itself to exist to me. Like, the stuff with the meteor at the beginning, like, I don't fully understand the purpose of the meteor, because the whole movie is like this environmental PSA about why we have to stop ripping down the rainforests and shit. But the whole crux of the threat is about this meteor, waking up Godzilla.
Yeah, ultimately, that is, I think, the biggest issue with the movie, as far as I'm concerned, is that the message is kind of mixed. Is it about this meteor causing problems, or is it humanity? Because it almost comes across at certain points, because the message is mixed, like it's trying to be an anti, like,
It's almost like we caused the meteor.
Right. It almost comes across like they're blaming humanity for the meteor happening, and then no.
Yeah, like I don't know. Like, did we call it? Were we like, hey man, we want to be wiped out? Maybe the idea.
Nebula M, can you send a fucking meteor?
Maybe the idea is that Batra calls the meteor, but then why would Batra like require Mothra to kill herself to stop? I don't know. It makes zero sense to me. I think the story in this is a fucking mess.
I love the opening credits where the meteor fucking crashes into the earth, and we just see fucking Godzilla waking up under the water, and it's all fucking red in the bubbles.
Yes.
Fucking wonderful.
Another shot that is recreated in Space Godzilla. I also think that this movie is sort of like, it's Space Godzilla, except it's not nearly as cheesy, but I think Space Godzilla is more fun.
God, no.
That's my own opinion. I know. I also think Space Godzilla is less messy.
I need a fucking Xanax to watch Space Godzilla.
I need. Please, you know how much weed I smoked when we were watching this. So you know, I'm not into this one, D. I think Godzilla's laughable lack of importance in the narrative is enough for me to just go, what the fuck were they thinking? And I think that's also good enough reason for me to go, if you are watching these for good Godzilla movies, you can absolutely skip this one. Because Godzilla's only in 2 scenes.
However, I would argue that if you look at it as a Mothra movie instead, this is why I think the second title you mentioned, Godzilla and Mothra: The Battle for Earth, works better as a title to describe the movie than calling it Godzilla versus Mothra '92, because it's not the movie, like, they fight a couple times in the movie, but it's not really about Godzilla versusing, if I can use that as a verb. It's not really about Godzilla fighting Mothra.
I just want you to go through all of the Godzilla and Gamera movies and describe them as Godzilla and Gamera versusing something.
Exactly. But yeah, it's not really about their fight, even though they do fight a couple times. It's more so about this big environmental event that's going on, and like these 3 monsters that are all sort of, you know, converging, I guess is the word you can say. So I think that's a better title to describe it than calling it Godzilla versus Mothra '92.
Yeah.
I always use the Godzilla and Mothra Battle for Earth title. Sometimes I just drop the names all together and call it Battle for Earth. So if you want to watch a good Mothra movie, then I would say, you know, we'll watch this one. I think it is a good Mothra movie. I think, again, it's kind of a precursor to the Rebirth of Mothra trilogy in a way. The plot doesn't quite line up, but in a way it's almost like the Rebirth of Mothra trilogy is more like a quadrilogy.
It's more traditional. It's more traditional Mothra fare than Rebirth is. Rebirth is a redirect, is like a, it's a rebirth. It's a new direction for Mothra. This is very traditional, and I think that's why I don't think it's a great Mothra movie. It's fine, but it's just it's an unimaginative remake to me.
Part of the reason that I think I enjoy or that I like the first Rebirth of Mothra movie as much as I did is that I grew up with this movie, and then when you watch Rebirth of Mothra, it's a huge plot point that the fucking Mothra from this movie, or at least the same suit, gets viciously murdered.
It seems like she's sort of supposed to be the same character, except this is not that Godzilla world.
Exactly. So, like, this version of Mothra that you get introduced to in Battle for Earth, you see get, like, viciously murdered in Rebirth of Mothra, and it kind of caused that movie to have an emotional resonance that I don't think it would have had otherwise. But yeah, I mean...
Well, all right. That is...
again, like you said, it's a 90s reinterpretation of the Mothra story, but also with Mothra versus Godzilla elements woven into the plot, and the introduction of an amazing new kaiju in the form of Batra. So if all of that sounds appealing to you, then fuck Bill and go watch it.
Don't fuck me, please. I don't need that in my life right now. I don't need the emotional baggage. But what I do need is us to... So Dylan, that was the Heisei double penetration. That was our controversy out of the way. We're back onto agreeing. You ready?
Oh boy, yeah.
I don't think you're ready because we're about to talk about some weird show of crap. We are actually going to talk about next up one that we almost didn't put on this list because we thought that, maybe we had a turnaround to this movie. Maybe this movie isn't as bad as we thought it was. Maybe there was some enjoyment to be had here. But Dylan, why did we end up putting Godzilla's Revenge back on this list? Do you think it's garbage?
As you were saying, I was kind of hesitant, or not hesitant. Well, I'll use hesitant because I can't think of the word that I really should have said. I was debating about putting this movie on the list because, I don't hate it as much as I used to. You as a kid, when you're a kid, I think you see Godzilla's Revenge for the first time as a Godzilla fan, it's like, oh, this is bullshit, and you kind of get mad at it. But over time, I kind of mellowed on it quite a bit. Ultimately, it's on this list just because. Yeah, I don't hate it like I used to, but it is one of my 5 least favorite. Like, if I was to rank the Godzilla movies and be like, oh, these are the ones I'm most likely to watch at any particular time, yeah, this is going to be close to the bottom, just because it's a fucking weird movie.
It's not the weirdness for me. For me, it's almost strictly the stock footage. Not strictly. Like, the human stuff ain't great. But the human stuff is fine. Like, this is an Ishiro Honda movie. Like, it's all well made and enough. But the stock footage is boring as fuck. We watched this immediately after watching Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, and that's when I really realized that that it had to go on the list, was because it's laughable how, like, boring and bad it is just to go from, like, watching a properly placed and edited version of the fight with Ebra, and then all of a sudden we're watching this crappy version of it.
Yeah, I mean, it can be hilarious at times to like point and laugh at how, like, oh, the suit changed from shot to shot, like, but yeah, ultimately there is just a way over reliance here on stock footage.
I don't think this is garbage though, because there are some clever edits to work around the stock footage. Like, they cut 2 parts of the Ebra fight together in a clever way. Like, they go under the water towards the end of the first fight, and when they come up, it's towards the end of the second fight. Like, that's clever. There's also seemingly this, like, notion of Ichiro and Minya are, like, kept separate from the action and are only sort of indirectly affected by it at certain points. Like, a rock will be thrown their way, they'll get hit by some water. But they're pretty safe sitting so far away. And I think that's Honda dipping his clever filmmaker hat into the ring here. Because, the whole movie is about bullying and about sticking up for yourself, so I think that's intentional. And then Minya and Ichiro both end up getting involved in the action later in the film and sticking up for themselves. But weirdly, I feel like it kind of... I don't know, does the human stuff work at all for you?
The problem is, ultimately, we are not the target audience for this movie. This is the only Godzilla movie that's, like, straight up made to be a kid's film.
Yeah, it's weird though, because, like, all the human stuff is, like, so dark and depressing though. Like, it's set in this like fucking grungy metropolitan part of Tokyo, like the industrial part. Everybody's broke and they can't see their kids because they're always working. It's really depressing. But I guess it almost feels like a Disney movie, I guess, at points in terms of the tone. So I guess that makes sense. I guess it does make sense as a kid sort of adventure fantasy.
Yeah, a Disney movie through, like, a weird drug-addled late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah, because then it's more like the whole escaping into the fantasy thing is more direct in this, where he falls asleep and goes into the monster world. It's interesting at the very least as, like, oh, this is a movie that's sort of set in the real world where Godzilla is a fictional character. And then we sort of see somebody's interpretation of this fictional world play out with bits from the actual films in front of us. So I guess if you want to argue that this film makes sense, it kind of makes sense that it uses mostly stock footage because the kid only has his memories of seeing real Godzilla movies. But that don't mean it's fun to watch. I think this movie is more
it's certainly a better conceit to use stock footage than fucking Gamera the Super Monster had.
Oh fuck yes! Oh my god! My god!
I can give this movie that. This is kind of the Gamera the Super Monster of Godzilla movies, and it is much better than Gamera the Super Monster.
Yeah, I would totally have to say so. I mean, especially since the new effects footage also looks fine, even without Sabraya's help. Honda did it all himself, and it all looks pretty good. But in Super Monster, that 12 seconds of Gamera flying back and forth, even that looks shit.
Yeah.
So this movie definitely has a leg up over that, but that don't make it good. I think that this movie is more interesting than it is entertaining.
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating on a conceptual and production level.
Interestingly enough, I think I would actually kind of recommend it to somebody, even if they're just sort of casually watching the Godzilla franchise.
Yes, yeah, I would have to agree. I don't think this is one you should skip.
Because what a curiosity piece. It's this weird little kids movie made in an era where Toho thought their Godzilla series was concluded. I mean, Destroy All Monsters had come out, so it's not really in continuity with anything. It's just its own little one-off thing. It's this sort of odd little misnomer within the franchise, and it's also kind of a big deal within Godzilla fan circles. I mean, people talk about this movie a lot when you run in our kind of circles. You know, this is the kind of thing that gets talked about and joked about.
This is the quintessential bad Godzilla movie.
Yeah, this is the one that everybody references. So which is
almost why we tried to take it off the list, because we were like, well, everybody's talked about it.
So if you're sort of getting into the whole Godzilla fandom scene for the first time,
you poor motherfucker.
It definitely is one that you're going to want to watch, just so you'll know what all the fuss is about. If you're that one guy who didn't even know what tokusatsu was, but then somehow you got accidentally added to Toku Legion, true story, by the way, go watch this movie.
How did that happen?
I don't know. Some dude, like, I saw a post on Toku Legion one day. He's like, I don't even really know what Toku is, but I just accidentally got added to this group, and I've been reading a lot of the posts, and now I'm kind of fascinated, so I'm going to stick around and learn.
Like, all right. That's awesome. That's great. I hope we have a lot of people like that. And those people should definitely watch Godzilla's Revenge, because it's fucking fascinating. This is also the first and only Ishiro Honda Godzilla on this list, so I think that's also why it's the only one that I'm like, yeah, you don't skip this one.
Yeah. Because the parts that aren't stock footage are, I think, pretty well made. I mean, they're Ishiro Honda. I mean, the man knows how to...
They're well made. They're just not especially interesting.
Yeah.
At least in execution. Conceptually, again, this movie has a lot going for it.
You do have shit in the movie, so that's something to look forward to.
All right, D. Last one. The finale. By the way, I don't know, did we mention that these are in no particular order? Because they're really not.
Yeah, they're not in any order as far as which ones we consider the worst. I'd say that if they were ranked in an order, Revenge would probably be ranked as the lowest on the list, as in it would be the one that I'm the least spiteful towards. You know what I mean?
I guess. I don't know if I would say that. I would actually say the one we're about to talk about would probably be there for me. But I don't know. That's why we didn't rank them, is because it's hard to think about, and once you do it, it doesn't even matter. So I just thought it was more fun to just talk about these and just go through them and go, oh, why is that one crap, and make fun of them and kind of rip them apart. So that's why we did it the way we did it. So we hope you enjoyed it, and we're gonna obviously continue it with the last one. So not necessarily the worst Godzilla movie, but just the last one we're gonna rip apart here. 1971, Godzilla vs. Hedorah. Dylan, is it garbage? There's certainly a lot of garbage in it, isn't there?
I'd say it's shit.
Yeah.
This movie,
yeah,
has similar issues to Godzilla's Revenge, but doesn't have any of the excuses. It's just as fucking weird and out there, but it doesn't have the excuse of being like this wacky kids movie that's not really in continuity with anything. This is just a movie that baffles me. It doesn't make any sense on any sort of level. They give like 3 different like explanations for where Hedorah might have come from. There's the weird shit at the end with the fucking Godzilla pulling out
Well,
Hedorah's
I think
gonads.
I
There's the
think
fucking
I think the 3 origins are all connected. I just think that the movie never brings its own threads together, and I guess that it thinks that that's like avant-garde, but I just think it's kind of lazy.
there's the fish scene. There's the fucking the fucking my least favorite Godzilla song in any Godzilla movie. I'd rather listen to the words get stuck in my throat. It's just I don't like it.
The monster scenes are okay. Visually, I think it's kind of an impressive film. I think visually it's got some good atmosphere. There's some fun monster bits. Like there's one bit where Godzilla swings Hedorah around, and like the sludge goes through a window where some guys are playing poker and they all die. That's fucking hysterical. Like that's awesome. There's a couple moments that shine to me. I think that this one is less boring. Well, okay, no, it's not less boring. It's less clinical and less sterile than some of the ones we mentioned. I think I'd rather watch this than Megaguirus.
Sure, yeah. I can.
Or Battle for Earth for me. I mean, obviously you're not going to feel that way, but would you rather put this in than Space Godzilla? I kind of would even put it in over Space Godzilla.
Yeah, I think so. It's certainly, well, like you said, there are
because
moments
of how weird it is. I think the weirdness is not good, but it's certainly unique, and it certainly has some value to it. There are some good ideas in there, but man, this movie just, again, like all of them, I think they all have this similar problem of they just come together into nothing.
Well, here's the thing. Like you were mentioning, there's some good moments in here. There's some really interesting shots, and there's some good moments, but some good cinematography here and there. Some good lighting, stuff like that. There are moments where you're like, somebody who made this movie knew how to make a movie, but then the rest of it, getting to those moments, it's like all these good moments suspended in a bowl of shit. Like you have to sit through all this other stuff to get to those moments, and then there's just so much in it that makes you scratch it. This is, of course, the infamous movie where Godzilla flies.
Oh, by the way, can we talk about how long, drawn out, and not good the last monster fight is? My God,
it just keeps going, doesn't it?
It just keeps going. Then you think it's over, and then Hedorah bursts out of his own corpse and is alive again, and you want to throw yourself off a building.
Like it reaches a natural conclusion, and then the movie's like, nope, fuck you, it's going to keep going.
And then it ends exactly the same way. Like Godzilla does the same thing again, just again and more.
Yeah. I've seen other monster movies do that thing, like that joke where like you think the monster's dead and then they jump back up and you have to presume killing them again. But it's never this long. They don't. It's usually just like a little joke. They don't draw it out.
It's also a long fight before that. Like, it's not even just that they do that drags it out. It's a long fight before that.
I mean, most recently, Kong Skull Island kind of has a moment in that where you think he's finished the skull crawler, but then it jumps back up on him again, and that's when he does the fucking, like, fatality on it and pulls out all of its innards.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. That totally works in that movie, though, and that last fight is certainly not drawn out. But this movie, like, the entire last 40 minutes or so is kind of one long last monster fight. But again, it's really floaty. This movie is definitely like, if you're going to call a movie like floaty in a sense of you're just sort of floating around doing nothing and you're just like, why am I floating around? What is this bullshit? This definitely is one of those movies. It's got that 70s sort of 70s sort of vibe.
I think if you want to call a movie a floater, this is certainly the one.
Good one.
The fucking, here's one thing I can give it as opposed to Battle for Earth. Sort of opposite problems here. The environmental message is not unclear in this movie. The environmental message is very obnoxiously clear in this movie. I feel like I'm watching an hour and a half long Captain Planet special. some of the time.
Where Godzilla fills that role.
It just never is. Like that awful song. I fucking hate that song, and it'll just come back at random moments. Fucking, I don't even know how it goes. It's terrible. I don't like it.
Kaizen,
Oh
Kaizen.
God, no. Uh,
This movie is one that bores me. It confuses me. It doesn't hold my interest. It doesn't have enough that I like in it to make me defend it in any way.
it starts out pretty good too. Like at the beginning of the movie when like Hedorah first shows up and it's all mysterious and you're like, oh, the fuck was that? Like it starts out like really tense and whatnot, and then it loses that.
But
It
it's
way
got
overstays it
some
well.
punchy monster movie stuff in it, don't it? Like, Hedorah is a
Yeah.
good idea for a monster. There's some dark imagery in this that is pretty cool, that I definitely think influenced some later Godzilla movies and some later monster movies. Like, I think some of the imagery in Shin may have come from this a little bit. And this is sort of the closest thing to Shin that we have, isn't it?
Well, Shin's kind of this and Destroya, kind of.
Sure. So yeah, it's sort of a nothing movie that has more memorable elements that sort of rises it above being a nothing movie, but the memorable elements aren't really good. It's just sort of like, oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
You know? So I don't know, D.
This is one of those Godzilla movies that I feel like you have to have nostalgia for in order to love.
That's fair. I this is another one of the ones that I saw later. It was one that I always caught, but I always had like a fascination with it because it was always one that I would catch bits of on TV, and I could never sit through all of. I had that with Destroy All Monsters for years too, until I finally rented it on VHS. I would always catch bits of it on TV, and I never got the complete story. And then I finally fucking got the DVD and was able to watch the whole thing, and I was like, wow, that's boring.
And Hedorah is another example of a kaiju that I think is so interesting and deserves to be in a better movie. I would love to see Hedorah come back, especially now in the age of CG. I think Hedorah is the type of monster that really just like is born to be done through CG, because it's a blob, and you can do a lot more with a blob through CG than you can through practical effects. I'm afraid that's just one of those areas where the practical effects can't do what the CG is able to do with that concept. I mean, some of the shit that we see him doing in like that one issue of Godzilla Legends, you could totally do in live action now with the current state of the CG. So I would love to see Hedorah come back. Maybe as a Mothra villain. I've always thought that because of his environmental thing, he might make a better Mothra villain than a Godzilla villain.
I'd like to see Toho do some independent Mothra movies. That'd be nice.
That would be nice. Fucking Shin Mothra, tiny ass wings and
giant body,
long abdomen.
It's like dragging on the ground and shit. Another mouth at the end. Great. Would you skip Godzilla versus Hedorah, D? I think it's totally skippable.
I don't think it's necessarily one that I'm like gonna go out of my way to say, yeah, skip it. It fucking sucks. But it's also not one that I think is all that like necessary. You know what I mean?
Nothing happens in it.
If anything about it sounds interesting to you, if maybe in a similar way to Godzilla's Revenge, if maybe you've heard some weird shit about it and you want to check it out for yourself and see what the big deal is, yeah, go for it. But ultimately, I don't think it's one that you really need. It's really quite standalone. Unlike the '70s movies to follow, all the other '70s movies have at least one movie that they're connected to, but this one you can kind of just skip altogether and it won't really make a difference. Fucking watch Gigan. Fucking Gigan's great. We fucking loved Gigan. Rewatched it recently, but
oh yeah, Gigan's awesome. By and large, it's got some problems too, but not nearly. It's a way more lively and fun and enjoyable experience than this is.
Or if you want to see the absolute height of '70s Godzilla, go watch the two Mechagodzilla films. But this,
magical.
Again, I feel like this is another example of them like not really knowing what to do. This was when Godzilla came back from being a dead franchise. You know, they had sort of concluded the series with Destroy All Monsters, and then at some point they were like, oh, let's make more anyway.
And they tried to change what he was. This is obviously him going through his like, am I Gamera phase? Like he's a superhero in this, obviously.
Yeah, this is straight up hero Godzilla.
The first time we get that.
Yeah, I mean, he had sort of started to become that earlier on, but this is the first time that it's like straight up like, I'm a superhero. Look, I can fly. Fucking
yeah, they even do that trope.
Come to my movie instead of Gamera's, kids.
Even though the way I fly somehow makes less sense.
I'm catering to you now because your parents don't come see my movies anymore. So
yeah, because they're too old. Oh, that's so sad. Godzilla, the parents that used to go to Godzilla movies take their kids to Gamera and don't go to Godzilla. Oh, that makes me sad. Anyway,
it's fine now. Now Gamera's got a fucking dead end job in a video store somewhere holding a Shin Godzilla sign. So it's all good.
It's all worked out for the best. It's everybody won who should have won in the end.
Everybody's where they belong.
Oh, but you know what? See, Hedorah is another movie where Godzilla's not really in it that much. Like he doesn't really have much to do in the story.
Right, and what's the conceit for him to fight Hedorah again?
The conceit is in what brings him to him? Nothing. He just general concern for the environment, seemingly.
He just shows up. He literally is just like fucking Captain Planet in this movie. He's fucking here to save the day.
Yeah, it's just a general concern for the environment. Which I mean, I guess is certainly to be admired, but it's just not very, interesting for a Godzilla movie.
It's also not very Godzilla.
Well, that's not true. He's usually pretty concerned. He's always being like, don't drop nukes on me. He's usually pretty clear about that. I'd say that's a pretty clear environmental message.
That's like the kaiju equivalent of like, hey guys, quit chucking spitballs at me right now. All right, cut it out.
Godzilla's the nerdy guy in class who's trying to get people to stop bullying him, but nobody takes him seriously. Until he goes on a shooting spree.
Until he beats the shit out of some people.
Totally makes sense to me.
Cut it out, guys.
Well, D, I think we've said everything that needs to be said, haven't we?
Yeah.
Well, that's 5 Godzilla movies that Dillion and I do not like. We hope you enjoyed, and we hope that they're movies that even if you do like them, you were able to enjoy us sort of giving our pieces on them as to why we didn't. And we hope you enjoyed us. Generally, just having a good time discussing some good old-fashioned Godzilla stuff. So I believe that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Demons from Outer Space. D, pretty good job. So next,
please address all of your hate mail to Bill Worcester, the Battle for Earth hater. Hashtag Batra was right.
Oh my god. I'll take it. Fuck Battle for Earth. It's boring as sin. I'd rather watch Hedorah than Battle for Earth. So fuck you. So next week, the plan was to review Reliquary on the Demons from Outer Space. So the issue is I'm actually going to be shooting my senior project next weekend. So I think we may have to take a week off. So if we do that, that'll provide us some time to do the book. So does that sound good to you, D? We'll take a week off and review.
That sounds great to me because I have not had a chance to do any listening yet. So
yeah, no, it's me neither. So we'll do that. We'll take a week off. I've got some sci-fi videos and stuff that we can put up in the interim, so it's not like you won't hear from us. And we're gonna review Power Rangers soon anyway, as soon as we all get the chance to see that. So it's not like you won't hear from us. But we'll be back in 2 weeks for the Demons from Outer Space with a review of Douglas Preston and the other dude's name, Lincoln Child. That's his name. Their book Relic, the second in the Pendergast series sequel. Reliquary. I'm sorry. It's late. I'm sorry. We're going to be reviewing Reliquary, so that's our plan for next time. We hope you will join us.
If anybody's interested, I haven't actually got to see the Power Rangers movie yet, but the mobile game is surprisingly fun. I give it my endorsement.
You're playing it right now, aren't you?
No.
Oh, I see. You're playing solitaire right now, though.
Oh yeah, tons of that.
I
Always.
figured. Bitch. All right, so that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Demons from Outer Space. Until next time, everyone, I'm Bill Worster, a.k.a. Zazubaar.
And I'm Super DM64.
It's a podcast, kids. You can't see it. Where is it? I can't find it. Somebody turn on the light. Fuck! Turn it on.